In the previous video, we had a look at how we could bring a background image in to work with in Blender to help with the modeling of our object. And I'm in that same file that I used for the last video, but I've changed to a perspective view, so we can't see the image at the moment. But what's important here is we just look up in our properties here that we have our image here. In my case, it's the Freyberg pool in the empty object inside Blender. Now the empty object just means it's not a 3D object which we can work with and manipulate, but it's something that I'm going to use as a reference. And what's important is that I'm going to come up here to the top right and I'm going to click on X, which will take us into this orthographic view to work with. And I've got my image here and I've just expanded it to work with, and essentially what I'm going to do is go through the process where you can actually start to model using a background image as the basis to work with. So I'm going to just manipulate my cube a little bit, just kind of move it into the same space, and I'm still in object mode and I'm just going to scale it out a little bit. So it's approximately the size of what I'm working with, and I'll just make this a little bit higher and just scale it a little bit more. So essentially what I have here is just a large block which I'm going to modify in order to create my poll. So this is what it looks like without the reference image there. Again, click back on X, which will take me in to look at. And I can now go into object mode to do a little bit of work with the object. So just click on edit mode I meant. And now I can start to edit the parts of the image to start to line things up. Now, you might think it's quite difficult to do because we can't actually see the image behind the object which I have. So what I'm going to do is again go up here to the top right, just above the orthographic view, and I'm just going to choose wireframe for my view, which kind of makes my 3D object transparent so I can see the image behind it. At the moment, my entire object is selected. Now I don't actually need that to happen because all I'm going to do is work with individual vertices, and what I'm going to do is just move them and line them up with what I have on the drawing. Now I've put no loop cuts in here because I want to line the parts up first, so it's easier to actually do it this way. But essentially I'm going to make sure I'm in the vertex select, and I'm going to select on a vertex. It's highlighted, you can see that it's got white on it, and I'm just going to use the move tool, and I can freely move it, and I'm going to just pop it at the top of the building there. Now remembering, because it's a 3D object, I've only moved one vertex, so I need to select the second vertex and move it to the same place, and that will create the top of my object. Come down to the bottom, and I'm just going to click and move it, and then I have to do the same thing with the other one. I'm going to zoom in a little bit because they're quite small. Just make sure I select the right one and move it. You'll be able to see the edges as you move them, so if you don't get things right, you can always go back and click on them again. Click on the first vertex, this is kind of the front one, line it up. Select the second one and line it up. So what I'm doing here is, before I've added any loop cuts, is just basically getting the edges of the building in the right place. And I've done that easy enough, and just drag that over. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a vertical vertex, so I can position the points at these ends and then add a third vertical vertex, loop cut at each side, so I can then add the extra detail to this main body part here. So I don't need to really change anything. I just go to my loop cut and select that, and you can see the little yellow loop cut, and I'm just holding and dragging it into place, so it's actually pretty accurate there, which is great. And again, just need to be careful, make sure I'm doing a vertical one. I'm going to click and drag this and I'll line it up at the bottom, and I just need to make some changes here to the top. So I'm going to go back to my, again making sure I'm in my vertex mode. I'm just going to grab these two vertices and move them so they line up. That looks good. And I might just move this one over here. It looks pretty good, but need to zoom in, of course. That's something you may need to do a lot of. Things can get a bit tricky. I'll just move this across a lot so you can see how it's done. So basically I've set the top and bottom of the columns pretty accurately. So if you're kind of understanding what's happening now, I need to create the points around here and around here and around here and around here. And to do that, I'm just going to create 2 more vertical loop cuts in here. So back to my loop cut, and nothing's happening for me. I am in the loop cut. There it is. Just got to make sure that I'm doing a vertical cut. So this is the next cut here. And 1 more vertical cut. Whoops, let's move the whole object. So just Control Z. Just got to be really careful with it. Just make sure that I get my cut coming in. Having a complete nightmare, as you always do. I've got to click at the right time, that's the problem. And I might just click off it and then click back on the object. Actually going back to the normal view will actually help me for this. So I just need to add 1 more loop cut. There it is. I can't believe I'm videoing this and having the trouble doing it, which is a bit of a pain. There it is. It's kind of wanting to come through, but not. I might just scroll out, and there we go. So I need this 3rd one here, and I need a 3rd one here. So had a little bit of trouble getting my loop cuts in. So I just went to kind of a perspective mode so it will work properly. I'm going to click back on X. Which will take me back to my image view, and I'm going to go back to wireframe model because I had a little bit of trouble doing what I did there. And again, I'm just going to move the vertexes. So select a vertex, I'm going to move it down to where it should be on the drawing, and do the same thing for the next one. And when I next go back to look at my 3D model, I'll actually have that kind of face completely built. I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom here. Just drag it up and position it in place. And you've always got to do 2 because you've got another edge behind the point you click on because it's a 3-dimensional space that we're working with. And same thing here, just drag this down to the position it should be. And drag down to the position it should be. This video is going on way too long because of my kind of errors before. And final ones, just drag up onto the drawing where that join is. So forward and back one, and that's complete for the main body of the building. Now I won't go through and do the roof at the same time, but it's kind of following the same technique. I'm just going to click back to the viewport shading so you can actually see here in grey, this is my model now, and as I scrolled out you can see I've actually got the shape of the pool pretty well. And of course I'm just going to go back to object view, and I can actually just scale out and make it wider. So this is kind of the Freiburg pool which I'm making from that single drawing. It's kind of about that width. There's some other detailings in the roof to come on, but if you draw a accurate but relatively simple drawing, a sectional elevation, you can actually use it to model your building with, and it's a really effective technique which is used a lot.